Well, the British royals have posed for a new formal photograph. You notice there, she's the only splash of color in this picture. But take a close look at her tiara.
Tension inside the royal household is reportedly reaching a breaking point after an unexpected dispute over one of its most treasured symbols. Sources claim Queen Camilla insisted that Catherine lend her royal tiara for an upcoming occasion, a request said to have left Prince William furious. What should have been a simple matter of protocol has ignited whispers of hierarchy, respect, and influence behind palace walls. Courtiers remain tight-lipped, yet speculation spreads rapidly. Was this tradition in motion, or a power move that crossed an unspoken line? The Queen Consort's tiara-less appearance. By the end of that tense week, something unusual unfolded inside the walls of Buckingham Palace. At a grand evening reception filled with writers, diplomats, and flashing cameras, the Queen Consort stepped into the room without a tiara. To the public, it seemed stylish, intentional, even refreshing. She wore a deep sapphire necklace that caught the light beautifully. Her earrings matched perfectly. Her gown was elegant, her smile steady. Fashion critics praised her modern restraint. Commentators spoke about changing royal traditions and a softer image for the monarchy. But inside the palace, no one was discussing style. They understood what the world did not. In royal tradition, a tiara is never just a decoration. It is a signal. It speaks without words. It tells the room who holds rank, who carries authority, and who has the right to wear certain historical symbols. When a senior royal attends a formal evening event without one, especially when protocol expects it, that absence says something powerful. And this time, it was not by choice. Behind closed doors, staff had already been warned not to speak about the matter. The silence was deliberate. But silence does not stop tension. It only thickens it. Within hours of the event, whispers traveled quickly through private offices and long corridors. Senior aides reviewed schedules that had already been approved. Wardrobe teams avoided direct questions. Security officers grew unusually alert. Something had shifted in the balance, and everyone could feel it. The pressure had been building for days. Two major royal engagements had been planned dangerously close together. One was a prestigious literary reception hosted by the Queen Consort herself. The other marked the king's official birthday, a moment filled with tradition, military precision, and global attention. Both required perfection, demanded symbolism, and would be watched by the world. In preparation, control tightened. The Queen Consort took personal charge of nearly every detail. Guest lists were checked and rechecked. Rare flowers were flown in from overseas. Custom fabrics were ordered for carefully selected gowns. Lighting, seating, timing, nothing moved without approval. These were not just events, they were statements. But one detail refused to fall into place: the tiara. None of the pieces usually associated with the Queen Consort seemed right. Some overpowered the gowns. Others felt outdated. What should have been a simple selection became a growing problem. As fittings continued, frustration quietly grew. Then attention turned elsewhere. The Princess of Wales possessed several tiaras known for their balance and quiet authority. She had built a reputation for choosing pieces that symbolized legitimacy without demanding attention. One particular tiara stood out, refined, adaptable, and rich in meaning. A request was made. It was not framed as optional, but when it was declined, something delicate inside the institution was tested. For generations, the answer to conflict had been simple: the crown decides. Yet the modern monarchy is no longer that straightforward. Roles are more clearly defined. Boundaries are more carefully guarded. What happens when symbolism collides with authority? By the week's end, the Queen Consort stepped into the spotlight without a crown. To the public, it seemed like a simple style choice. But inside palace walls, everyone knew it signaled something far deeper. This was never about jewelry. It was about boundaries drawn in silence, and possibly shattered behind closed doors. What really unfolded in that private confrontation, and who truly holds the power to decide who wears the crown? Stay with us as we uncover every hidden detail. When boundaries were broken. After several days of careful planning, detailed fittings, and quiet preparation, it was reported that attention within the palace gradually shifted toward the Princess of Wales. Observers noted that her choices had always been intentional. Her wardrobe selections, her jewelry, and especially her tiaras, were said to carry meaning rather than mere decoration. Among the pieces most closely associated with her was a particular tiara, understated in appearance yet rich in symbolism. Palace insiders often described it as a versatile emblem of both authority and grace, a subtle reminder of continuity within the centuries-old institution. To those familiar with royal protocol, it represented calm control rather than spectacle. Sources claimed that when word circulated that the queen consort had expressed interest in the same tiara, reactions among palace staff were divided. Some believed the matter would be handled discreetly, quietly discussed behind closed doors, and resolved without public awareness. Others reportedly sensed a shift in tone, suggesting that this situation might extend beyond routine etiquette. Despite the murmurs, the Princess of Wales was said to have continued her engagements without disruption. Her schedule remained full, her appearances carefully coordinated. Those close to her described her approach as disciplined and methodical, emphasizing that nothing in her conduct suggested rivalry or defiance. According to Palace Whispers, the encounter itself took place late in the evening, when the corridors had grown still after hours of preparation. It was alleged that the queen consort approached unexpectedly, standing alone yet composed, her presence commanding the quiet space. Witnesses claimed she referenced the Oriental circlet, inquiring about its availability in a tone described as firm and deliberate. In royal circles, such matters are rarely addressed casually, especially not in passing. The Princess of Wales was said to have responded calmly, explaining that she intended to wear the tiara for upcoming engagements. Insiders suggested her explanation focused on coordination and planning rather than personal attachment. However, reports indicate that the queen consort insisted the princess had alternative pieces and did not require that particular one. Accounts of the exchange suggest the conversation sharpened at that point. It was alleged that the queen consort questioned motives, implying that the princess sought attention. Those familiar with the situation claim the princess maintained composure, clarifying that her decisions were rooted in preparation and respect for protocol. Observers later described the moment as less about jewelry and more about hierarchy, an unspoken negotiation of boundaries within the royal structure. Sources further alleged that the queen consort emphasized authority, reminding the princess of the crown's central role in all matters within the palace. The princess, according to those briefed afterward, ended the discussion with quiet restraint, indicating she would make the necessary arrangements. While the corridor reportedly returned to silence, insiders suggested the atmosphere within the palace had subtly shifted. By the following morning, it was said that signs of tension were noticeable. Staff members were observed exchanging glances, and conversations reportedly quieted when senior figures passed. Though no official statement was issued, speculation grew that something unusual had occurred. The situation appeared to escalate when the queen consort's security officer, accompanied by senior designers and officials, reportedly arrived at the royal jewelry vault. Traditionally, approval from the Princess of Wales would be required for the removal of pieces associated with her use. However, according to internal accounts, the officer asserted that they were acting under the queen consort's instruction, emphasizing that the princess was not the reigning queen. Sources claimed that the vault was subsequently opened. The Oriental circlet was reportedly removed first, followed by 2 additional historic tiaras. By the time the doors closed, 3 significant pieces were said to be under the queen consort's temporary control. Though carried out without public announcement, insiders described the action as symbolic, a move interpreted by some as an assertion of authority. This single act became a defining moment, sending ripples through palace life and challenging traditions that had endured for generations. And if a single piece of jewelry could wield such power, it begs the question, what secret role does a tiara, taken by force, really play, the shocking revelation of which could send shivers down your spine? Royal rules broken. It was reported that the message arrived late in the afternoon, delivered with a quiet urgency that immediately signaled concern. Catherine was said to have been seated in her private sitting room when the long-serving head of the royal jewelry vault appeared without prior notice, an unusual break from established protocol. Observers noted that his composed yet strained expression suggested the matter was serious. He reportedly apologized for the interruption before explaining that immediate awareness was necessary. According to palace sources, officials acting under the Queen Consort's direction had removed 3 of Catherine's most symbolically significant tiaras: the Oriental circlet, the Cambridge lover's knot, and the lotus flower. Insiders claimed Catherine received the information in silence, her posture controlled and her expression unreadable. However, those familiar with the moment suggested she quickly understood the deeper implications. The move was interpreted by some within palace circles not as administrative oversight, but as a deliberate statement, less about need and more about authority. Shortly afterward, it was alleged that Catherine proceeded unannounced to the Queen Consort's office. Witnesses described the atmosphere as tense from the outset. When questioned about the removal of the tiaras, the Queen Consort reportedly responded directly, suggesting that the action was taken because Catherine had been acting prematurely. Staff members present were said to have grown noticeably still, aware that they were observing a rare and highly sensitive exchange. Sources indicated that Catherine remained composed, emphasizing that the tiaras fell under her care and that established protocol governed their use. In response, the Queen Consort allegedly dismissed the concern, framing the matter as one of authority rather than procedure. Observers later described the exchange as sharp but controlled, with neither side raising their voice, yet both clearly asserting position. Catherine was said to have concluded the conversation with a quiet but firm remark, signaling that the incident would not simply fade into memory. She reportedly departed with her posture intact, though aides later suggested the emotional weight of the confrontation was considerable. Further reports emerged later that evening when a senior aide informed Catherine of another development. The lotus flower tiara was not being prepared for an official state function, but rather for a private appearance involving the Queen Consort's granddaughter, an engagement said to fall outside traditional royal protocol. Palace historians quietly noted that tiaras are typically reserved for formal duties and are rarely lent for personal or familial occasions. For some within the institution, the decision was viewed as a significant departure from long-standing custom. Despite the tension, Catherine was reported to have maintained calm throughout the evening, particularly in the presence of her children. Observers described her demeanor as warm and attentive, revealing no outward sign of the day's strain. Aides close to her suggested that the absence of Prince William, who was away at the time, intensified her sense of isolation. By the following morning, while the palace corridors appeared unchanged, insiders claimed the atmosphere felt different, conversations reportedly hushed more quickly, and staff carried out their duties with heightened awareness. Though no official acknowledgement was made, those within the palace suggested that the episode had subtly altered internal dynamics. To many observers, the matter was never truly about jewels. It was perceived as a quiet but unmistakable test of limits within the royal hierarchy. And Catherine knew, as she sat alone, that this confrontation was only the beginning of something far deeper and more complex within the palace walls. Who truly holds authority when tradition clashes with ambition? Stay tuned as the tension quietly unfolds, and the palace's hidden battle lines are revealed. The quiet struggle between Camilla and Catherine. At the heart of this conflict was not jewelry, but authority. For years, the British monarchy has operated on a delicate balance between title and trajectory. Queen Camilla holds the crown now, but Catherine represents what comes next. That imbalance has quietly shaped every interaction between them, even when smiles and protocol suggest harmony. The tiara dispute simply exposed what had long existed beneath the surface. Camilla's position, while officially secure, has never been emotionally settled within the public imagination. Her authority comes from marriage, not destiny. She stepped into a role already haunted by memory, comparison, and resistance. Every public appearance, every symbolic gesture, becomes a referendum on legitimacy. Catherine, by contrast, carries inevitability. She did not ask for the future crown, yet everything about her presence suggests preparation for it. That difference creates friction that no amount of protocol can fully contain. Power inside the palace is rarely exercised loudly. It moves through access, visibility, and symbolic permission. Who gets precedence at events? whose preferences shape schedules, whose image defines the monarchy's tone. In recent years, Catherine's influence has grown quietly but unmistakably. Her engagements generate global approval, her appearances stabilize headlines, her restraint reads as strength. For a sitting queen still fighting to command emotional authority, that contrast is unsettling. Camilla's response has increasingly reflected a need to assert relevance rather than coexistence. Control over symbolism becomes crucial in that effort. Jewelry, seating arrangements, and ceremonial visibility are not vanity tools. They are instruments of hierarchy. When those instruments begin to favor a future queen too clearly, the present one feels diminished. The struggle is not personal in the traditional sense, it is structural. Catherine, meanwhile, operates from a different position of power. She does not need to demand space. It is given to her by expectation. That can be misread as passivity, but it is strategic restraint. Her influence lies in consistency and public trust. This makes direct challenges to her role feel jarring, even when they occur quietly. They disrupt an unspoken agreement that stability benefits everyone. In the end, the power struggle is not about dominance. Camilla is fighting to be fully seen now. Catherine is preparing for a role she cannot yet claim. The clash happens where present authority meets future certainty. And in that narrow space, even silence becomes a statement. When the princess was informed, the shock was not merely the absence of the jewels, but that the boundaries she had meticulously observed had been overridden without hesitation. This unprecedented move had shifted the balance in ways that would ripple through palace life for months to come. Let's see what her next move will uncover about the hidden rules of power. William's fury after protocol breach. Now, it was reported that the following morning brought what many described as a fragile sense of hope within Catherine's private quarters. Palace whispers had suggested that William and Princess Anne might return earlier than planned, and insiders claimed the possibility lifted Catherine's spirits, even if only slightly. Those close to her later shared that she did not expect an immediate solution to the growing tension, but rather the comfort of partnership. A sense that she would no longer be standing alone in the aftermath of the Tiara dispute. However, as the hours passed, that optimism reportedly began to fade. Catherine was said to have contacted William directly. Sources described his voice as warm and reassuring, yet the news he delivered was unchanged. Both he and Princess Anne would return according to their original schedule. Observers noted that while Catherine maintained composure during the call, the delay deepened the isolation she had quietly endured since the confrontation. Throughout the remainder of the day, insiders claimed she carried the weight of the palace's silence. The removal of the tiaras, the exchange of sharp words, and the underlying shift in protocol reportedly lingered heavily. Though she was said to have longed for someone in whom she could confide freely, she chose restraint. Sleep, according to aides, came in fragments. William's long-anticipated return finally arrived. Staff members reportedly heard the sound of his footsteps echo through the hall before he was seen. The children were said to have rushed toward him, their laughter briefly dissolving the tension that had hovered for days. Observers described the atmosphere as lighter, if only for a moment. Catherine, watching the reunion, was said to have visibly relaxed, steadied by the familiar rhythm of family life. Later that evening, once the household had quieted, sources indicated that William noticed a lingering strain in Catherine's expression. In the privacy of their quarters, he reportedly asked if something was wrong. It was then, insiders claim, that Catherine shared the full account of what had occurred during his absence. She detailed the unexpected confrontation, the demand regarding the tiaras, and the subsequent removal of not just one, but 3 significant pieces without her knowledge. Particular emphasis was placed on the lotus flower tiara, which had allegedly been designated for personal use beyond official duty. William was said to have listened carefully, absorbing the implications. According to those familiar with his reaction, he recognized that the matter extended beyond personal disagreement and into questions of institutional respect. He reportedly described the treatment as unacceptable, emphasizing that Catherine should never have been placed in such a position. Sources close to the couple claimed Catherine then explained the deeper meaning each tiara held for her. The oriental circlet she reportedly shared symbolized quiet resilience, The Cambridge lover's knot carried emotional significance tied to Princess Diana's legacy. The lotus flower represented personal growth and the difficult journey of adapting to royal life. Insiders suggested that her distress stemmed not from possession, but from what the removal symbolized, an erosion of dignity. William was said to have reassured her firmly, expressing determination that the matter would not be dismissed. Observers noted a visible shift in his demeanor, suggesting he viewed the breach as larger than a personal slight. Within palace circles, it was quietly acknowledged that the balance Catherine had maintained was now intertwined with broader questions of authority and respect, issues unlikely to fade without consequence. The story was no longer hers alone. It had become a matter of principle, power, and boundaries within the monarchy. And now, as the report reaches William, his reaction could change everything. How far will he go to restore respect and authority within the palace walls? Stay glued to your screen as we uncover the fury and the unfolding power struggle next. William confronts King Charles over Tiara breach. By dawn, William had made up his mind. According to sources close to the couple, he told Catherine there would be no more silence and no quiet acceptance of what had happened. Action would be taken, and it would be taken immediately. Staff later described the palace that morning as unusually quiet. Conversations were softer. Movements were careful. It felt as though everyone sensed that something serious was about to unfold. Catherine walked beside William through the corridors with calm restraint. No one could predict how the coming meeting would end, but this time she was not standing alone. When they reached the secretary's desk outside the king's study, surprise was clear. The visit had not been scheduled. They were informed that His Majesty was not expecting them. William responded evenly that they would wait. After a brief pause, they were told the king would arrive shortly. The wait felt long. William remained standing, eyes fixed on the closed door. Catherine sat quietly, smoothing her skirt. Aides later said the gesture was not nerves, but composure. She had never sought confrontation. Still, within palace walls, it was widely understood that certain boundaries had been tested. Moments later, King Charles arrived, visibly surprised to see them both. After brief greetings, William requested a private discussion. Sensing the seriousness, the king led them inside and closed the door. Sources familiar with the conversation say William began directly. He described the issue as a clear breach of protocol. Catherine then explained that 3 tiaras under her care had been removed from the vault. The king reportedly reacted with immediate concern and asked who had authorized it. William answered plainly, the Queen Consort. Silence followed as the king absorbed the information. Catherine continued, explaining that the removal came after a request she had not yet agreed to, and that the pieces were taken the very next morning in front of staff. William added that 1 tiara was not intended for official royal duty. When asked for details, Catherine named the lotus flower tiara. It had allegedly been set aside for personal use by a non-working family member. Palace aides later described this as especially troubling, given the strict traditions surrounding historic royal jewels. The king acknowledged that the situation was inappropriate. William stressed that this was not simply about jewelry, it was about authority and respect for established roles. Catherine affirmed that she had always honored hierarchy. In the end, the king conceded that matters should have been handled differently. William stated he would address the issue personally. The king gave a measured nod, signaling reluctant agreement. The stage was set. The breach had been acknowledged, but how far would the resolution reach, and what would it mean for the palace's delicate balance of power? Stay tuned as we uncover King Charles's final decision and the shocking consequences that would ripple through the royal household. King Charles' final word. Just as William and Catherine were preparing to leave the king's study, King Charles called them back. Palace sources said he looked thoughtful, as if considering the wider impact of what he had just learned. Then, in a move that shifted the mood instantly, he reached for the telephone and instructed that the Queen Consort come to his study at once. The tension in the room sharpened. This was no longer a private complaint. Minutes later, Camilla entered. At first, she appeared composed, but insiders noted that her expression tightened when she saw William and Catherine still there. After a brief greeting, she sat down at the king's request. Charles began calmly, explaining that he had been informed about the removal of several tiaras from the vault, including pieces officially under Catherine's care. According to those familiar with the exchange, Camilla defended her actions. She argued that the jewels belonged to the crown, not to any individual, and that she had acted in the institution's interest. But Charles did not simply accept that explanation. Acting for the crown, he reportedly replied, did not give anyone permission to ignore established protocol. Camilla suggested that protocol could be flexible, especially when hierarchy was involved. That remark, witnesses said, drew a visible reaction from the king. He straightened and clarified that the monarchy did not operate through private humiliation or public correction. What had happened, he stated, had created avoidable strain and risked sending the wrong message about unity within the royal family. When Camilla attempted to continue, Charles reportedly raised his hand to pause the exchange. Then he issued a clear directive. All the tiaras would be returned to the vault immediately, without exception. In addition, the queen consort would not wear a tiara at the upcoming engagements. For a brief moment, Camilla's composure seemed to falter. Then she acknowledged the decision. Charles turned to Catherine and expressed regret that she had been placed in such a difficult position. Catherine responded with quiet gratitude. William, in turn, thanked his father for addressing the issue directly. The matter, at least in that room, had been settled. Within hours, palace staff confirmed that every tiara had been returned to the vault. No public statement was made. To the outside world, nothing appeared unusual, but internally, the message was unmistakable. A boundary had been tested, and it had now been clearly reinforced. At the Booker Prize reception, Camilla appeared without a tiara, choosing sapphire jewelry instead. To casual observers, it looked like a simple style decision. Inside palace circles, however, the absence was understood as compliance with the king's order. The same pattern continued during the king's birthday engagements. Again, no tiara. Again, no explanation. Weeks later, Catherine attended a state banquet wearing the Oriental circlet. The choice was elegant and understated. There was no dramatic display, no public comment. Yet to those familiar with royal symbolism, it carried quiet meaning. It signaled continuity, stability, and restored order. Sources close to Catherine suggested her decision was not about triumph. It was about respect for tradition. The institution had corrected itself. The protocol had been restored. Public harmony remained intact. For William, insiders said, the outcome reflected balance, loyalty to his wife alongside respect for the crown. Within palace walls, the episode was remembered not as a scandal, but as a measured reminder that authority, when properly exercised, protects the monarchy rather than weakens it. So, what's your take on King Charles's resolution? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe.